Eastern, and we're here to rock and roll with Mick Jagger, but we're also ready to rock and roll with Coach and that guy right there. That guy right there, Mr. High School Principal. He's all that in a bag of chips now.
Came back on. Mick took a break.
Hey, he's out of control. He's Mr. DJ Packer now. Hey, Josh Labat, Principal of Memorial Pathway Academy in Garden ISD, Garden, USA. Ready to rock and roll on the flagship show like we always have our awesome authors, awesome speakers, awesome presenters, because you know what? We learn from each other. Iron sharpens iron, and we have another person here bringing their tool set, making sure that we all learn together because we're in the same awesome business. We're in education, the profession that creates all the other professions, and we're here to learn from each other. It ain't getting easier, and that's why we need to beg, borrow, and steal ideas from everybody that we have. So if you're watching this on a rebroadcast, please like it and share it. Like it and share it. That way the algorithms go up. We keep on getting those views. Hey, thank you to everybody. A lot of these shows started getting 6,000, 10,000 views. Thanks to you. Hey, you, South Dakota, thanks to you. Hey, you, Iowa, thanks to you. So if you are in Alaska or Hawaii, if you're in Maine or Florida or anywhere in the 48 middle, we need you. So come on over, come on in, and let's get our learning going on. What do you think about that, Dean Packard?
Hey, Josh, I think you left out a couple of states, but nevertheless, I think you hit on all bases. It's so important that we share out what we talk about on these shows, because guess what? These people that we bring on, we call them influencers. They are ripple effect people. They all do something so special in the field that we walk in each and every day. So it's great to have that happen. Hey, again, everybody, my name is Dean Packard, one of the co-founders of Unlock the Middle, and I absolutely love being here on Sunday nights because we get to meet new people. We get to find out new things going on around the country. So you're right, Josh. Hey, did your football team win today or no?
You know what? There's this guy that's coming on right now. He's going to be bragging. The Redskins got whooped, shellacked, just like the Colorado Buffaloes that I follow got whooped and shellacked by the Ducks. But at least South Carolina Gamecocks won. So at least I got one for two. So we're okay right there. But bring on that guest so you could smile like a proud Buffalo Bill fan.
You got it. All right. Come on. Coach Johnson, welcome to the table. Great to have you with us today. How are you tonight?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So Buffalo fan, is that what Josh is saying?
Yeah, I only live an hour from the Bills, so I've been a Buffalo fan, unfortunately long suffering because we lost 4 straight Super Bowls. But I just found out that the Redskins is Josh's team, and unfortunately, would dismantle be the appropriate word for today? So,
I like, this political term comes in handy right here. Shellacked. Shellacked. We got shellacked.
That's more than fair. Hey, the Patriots squeaked one out today, so whatever. And they've been on the backside for a little while now. So
hold on, before we go to business, let's just make sure we keep our fingers crossed. As long as Arlington Cowboys lose, we're going to be doing fine.
Really? All right, we're going down to see Cowboys next. I think it's next week, New England. So we'll see how that goes. Nevertheless, Coach Johnson, great to have you with us today. Hey, do us a favor. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your background, your origin. Let's dig into your story so everybody can hear about you.
Sure. So I grew up in a big family, oldest of 6. I actually played basketball for my father. He was my high school coach and also a phys ed teacher at the school. So he kind of got me into the love of education and also coaching. So I went to college. I got humbled because I was a pretty good high school player. In fact, my dream was, like a lot of kids, probably to play in the NBA. Then I played 1 year of college basketball, transferred, and got cut from the team. So it was a pretty humbling experience. But the good news is at the college that I went to, I did meet a young lady that we've been now married for 41 years. So that was a good positive thing for me. And she's helped be my guiding light. So I got out of college and my dream was to be a head coach in the area. I live in upstate New York in a suburb of Rochester called Greece, which is the largest town in Rochester. We have about 90,000 people. We have 4 high schools in our town. I grew up in the town. And after 3 years as a part-time teacher, and then finally got a full-time job and became a head basketball coach at a school about 20 minutes from where I grew up. And I had been successful as a JV coach for a couple of years. So I thought I knew everything about coaching. And I did such a great job that I led that team to 17 consecutive losses. And then both of you being in administration, you can appreciate this, as I ended up leaving that job because I didn't like what the administration had to say to me at the end of the year, which of course was, we're not going to have you back. So, so it was a pretty humbling experience, but probably ended up being the best professional experience for me as far as understanding that this arrogant 25-year-old had a lot to learn about leadership and how to be a coach and a more effective teacher. And that's when I kind of went on a journey to study leadership. And fortunately, I got a mentor the next year. I was teaching, I had to go back part-time, but I worked at a junior college. And for any of your followers, if they follow basketball, they probably have not heard of the coach I worked for. His name was Bill Van Gundy. But if they follow basketball, his sons, Jeff and Stan, have been head coaches in the NBA. So that was a good grooming for a year. And then I got an opportunity to go back and coach in the high school level. I taught in the elementary school at a small town about 30 minutes called Leroy. And then my big dream came true. I got an opportunity to come back to my hometown school district, where I became the head coach at Greece Olympia High School, which their program was in really bad shape. They had won 2 games the 2 previous seasons. And I was there for 7 years. And fortunately, the last 3 years was the 3 best years they ever had in the school history. So we got it going. We made the sectional semifinals, our postseason tournament, 3 semifinals in a row, although lost in heartbreakers in those 3 games. And then I moved over to my final stop, which I coached and taught at the school, Greece Athena, for 20 years. And they had a losing season the year before that, but they had some tradition. They had a state championship. They had a guy that played in the NBA for 7 years named John Wallace. And I got an opportunity to coach his younger brother. Unfortunately, John was 6'8", and his younger brother grew to be 5'11", so it wasn't quite the same. But I ended up having a pretty good career. My first 7 years, we had winning seasons, but we were still not struggling in the postseason, which a lot of people, you get measured a lot in coaching by how you do in the postseason, which unfortunately we are falling short. And then I had something really special happen in my life. In my 7th year, we ended up getting back to the semifinals for the first time at this new school, Greece Athena. But my 8th year, we had a young man come into our program that changed my life forever. His name was Jason McElwain. The world now knows him as J-Mac. And Jason was on the autism spectrum, he still is. And he tried out for our JV team. And my JV coach came and said, Coach, you always talk about, you know, what we're looking for in our program. And although he's not very talented, he's not good enough to be a player, he hits a lot of our other things. He's a we over me guy. He loves basketball. He wants to help our team. And so he offered him the team manager's job. And Jason was sitting on the bench for both the JV and the varsity game. And I was starting to get to know him, and I started to fall in love with this kid because he was so passionate about the game. And what was really neat about Jason was that after his sophomore year, he started coming to all our off-season things. And I started to really get to know him. I started to pick him up at his home, and he loved basketball. I loved basketball. And we started to really build this bond. And he tried out for the varsity as a junior. He didn't make the team. But I'll tell you guys, it was kind of a funny story. So first team meeting, his junior year, I walk in, he immediately raises his hand. I said, yeah, Jay. He says, Coach, we know you've never won the Section 5 championships. I'm like, thanks, Jay, for the reminder. But this year it's going to be different. We're going to establish this mantra. We're going to stay focused and we're going to help you win our first Section 5 championship. I said, well, thank you. Well, we had a good season. We actually got to the semifinals again, now for the 6th time in my career, and we lose at the buzzer to our crosstown rival. And we were devastated. But Jason was such an inspiration for me because he came back and came to all our off-season workouts. And although he was very small in stature, his senior year was probably 5'9", 115 pounds, soaking wet. But he tried out again. And I never in my career, and even since then, ever had a young man, if they tried out twice, that was a lot. But this guy was different. His perseverance was something special. So I tell him, you know, unfortunately, you're not quite good enough to be at the team, but I want to give you a gift for your commitment. And I think it's a great lesson for all of us in education is reward people for doing the right thing consistently. And that's what Jason did. And so I said, I'm going to give you a gift. And the gift is for our final home game where we honor the seniors. I'm going to put you in uniform and hopefully get you in the game. Well, I'll tell you, it was very touching. It touched my heart profoundly to see him now, instead of in his white shirt and black tie, he's embracing his parents in uniform. It was number 52. It was way too big. In fact, I gave it to him 2 days before the game, and there was a rumor going around school that he slept in it for 2 straight nights. He was pretty fired up. Well, my dream was I wanted to get him in with enough time to score a basket. And after 3 quarters of the game, I got everybody in. And with about 4 minutes to go, I put Jason in. Unfortunately, when he got in, the first thing that really touched me deeply was our student body. We had a good following that year. They called them 6 Men. They gave him a standing ovation. But what I and Jason didn't know is they had made, one of our parents had made these pictures of Jason's face, like placards. And he gave them to the student body. And when he walked on the floor, they showed those. And I got so overwhelmed with emotion that Mr. Macho sat down and tears actually started to flow down my face. Jason's in his first game. Now, I got to admit, the first time he got the ball, he went off script. He shot a 3-pointer from the corner, and it missed by like 6 feet. And I know I kid people that you're not supposed to pray in the public schools, but I was praying hard. I'm a person of faith. I'm going, dear God, please help him get one basket. Well, the next possession, he has a shorter shot for about 10 feet, and it hits the rim this time. So I'm thinking, all right, God's starting to listen. We're getting closer. Third possession, he has another 3. This time, magic. The place explodes. I'm thinking God must be a basketball fan. Not only has Jason scored, he's got a 3-pointer. It can't get any better than this, right? Wrong. For the next 3 minutes, Jason's idol was the late Kobe Bryant. In fact, Jason used to sign his name, Jason J. Mac Kobe McElwain, because he loved Kobe. And the crazy thing is, I'll come back and finish the story quickly, but 5 months after that game, Jason's at the ESPY Awards in California. He's up for the greatest sports moment of the year. And one of the other finalists is his idol, Kobe. Kobe had scored 81 points in an NBA game that year. He meets his idol and then beats him out for the ESPY. How did he do that? Well, after that first make, he makes another 3. Then he makes a basket where his foot is on the line. Then he missed a couple and he made one. And the 2 things I'll never forget, with about a minute to go, I'm sitting on the bench. I'm in shock. Tears are still rolling down my face. I can't believe what I'm seeing. And I get a tap on my shoulder. I'm shocked. I look behind me. It's Jason's mother. She's bawling her eyes out. And she whispers in my ear, Coach, this is the best gift you could ever give my son. What would you have done if you heard that? Of course, I cried harder. Then how the game ends is like out of a Hollywood ending. With about 10 seconds to go, our opponent, Spencerport, and I want to give kudos to their team and their coach. They were great sports that night. They score a basket, and our player that takes it out normally throws it to our point guard. But this time he throws it right to Jason. So Jason's jumping on the court, and I'm looking up at the clock, and it's ticking down 6, 5. I'm thinking he's just going to go in and make a short shot. Oh, no, he pulls up like 2 feet behind the arc. I'm like, Jason, don't shoot from there. You're going to ruin this moment. He launches this rainbow. Swish. I look over. Our student body runs on the floor. Our players run on the floor. I'm thinking, I'm living the movie Rudy, but this is really true. And then to close the story, Jason is put up on his shoulders by his teammates, and he's got the game ball over his head. And at that point, I had no idea how many points he has. And our public address announcer comes on and says the leading scorer for the Trojans tonight, J-Mac, with 20 points. And of course, with my math brain, if I figured it out right, if he played the whole game, he would have scored 160 points, which is pretty good. So, and I'll say there are so many lessons I learned from that, but I'll say one thing that was so special to my heart, because we had a lot of challenges. I wrote a book about it called A Coach in a Miracle, and our team was divided for a bunch of the year, but what was really special as we were building the team back and building that culture is I never asked the 4 players on the court to pass Jason the ball. Yet out of their own hearts, they passed the ball to him every single possession. In fact, one little sidelight is I kid Jason still. I see him all the time. I said, J-Mac, I'm still looking for your first assist. You didn't pass the ball once. But it was pretty special.
As a past high school coach for 12 years boys basketball, I applaud you for what you did right there, because that is we'll call it a life difference maker right there. Great story.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's learn a bit more about Jim, a little bit, Coach Jim, real quick. Talk to us. How were you as a student? How were you going through elementary, middle, high school? And then throughout that, through your career, it's a two-part question. How did your parents influence you along the way?
Well, my parents were great. Fortunately, they're both still alive. They're both in the late 80s. They're both educators. My mom was an elementary teacher. My dad actually was a high school coach and teacher, and then got into administration. So he ended up his career as a principal, and they were both special, and he influenced me in a really positive way. Academic support. And I got to admit, when I got to high school, though, sports was a higher priority for me. So I was a decent student, but I probably could have done a little better if I really put my mind to it. And then college, I kind of messed up early on, especially when I got cut from the team. I kind of went off a unbeaten path there for a while. But fortunately, the lady I met, and now we've been married, she kind of guided me. And then in my last couple of years in college, I did quite well as well. And then I ended up getting straight A's on my master's program. And I actually got my administrative certification, although I never got into administration because I got too much into coaching. I loved it too much to get out. So.
Well, you're doing everything that I once thought I was going to be. So at the high school level, I was a high school coach for 12 years. I always thought I was going to run the course, and I loved every minute of it. But then I went into administration, so I took the other track. But
Yeah,
good,
absolutely.
good for you. Now, who has inspired you throughout your career, and who motivates you today? I know you said your wife has a big part of who you are and what you're all about. So talk a little bit about that, if you could.
Sure. So for me, when I really got into coaching, so John Wooden was kind of my first major influence. The great late UCLA coach. I used to study a lot about him. In fact, I'm aging myself, but I would stay up late. When we didn't have all the cable channels to watch UCLA with John Wooden coaching the team. When my parents, especially like on a Saturday night, they would let me stay up late that one night. But so he was a major influence. And then I just started to follow coaches, when Coach Van Gundy's son started to, really move up the ladder. I followed their careers a lot. I was, although he's had his ups and downs, he's back at St. John's, but I really became a student of Rick Pitino. I thought he, although he's had some setbacks, but he certainly a very dynamic coach, for sure. And so those are some of the ones. And then the interesting sidelight is I really got into my own personal growth outside of education. So I really got into, Zig Ziglar and Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn is probably, which was Tony Robbins' first mentor, is a guy that really helped me in life. I really started to learn a lot about, in fact, I'll share one thing, because as educators, in my first 10 years when we were married, and, as we all know, educators do okay, but they're certainly not the highest paid people. But Jim Rohn said a statement once. I was listening to one of his audio programs, and he was talking about that he was completely broke. And his mentor said, "Jim, if you want to be wealthy, study wealth." And I'm like 29 years old. I'm like, wow, that's a pretty simplistic statement, but that is so true. And I started to save money. It's amazing how that multiplies when you actually start to understand what you can do with your money. So a little sidelight there, but those have been really good influences. And now I'm extremely avid reader. I do a book recommendation every Wednesday. So I read almost a book a week now. I read a ton of books. And I'm so interested in leadership. I do a leadership podcast called the Limitless Leadership Lounge with two other people that we try to help young and emerging leaders. It's a way that I could give back, because I mentioned earlier at 25, I ended up losing my first varsity job. So I wanted to help people when they first get into leadership, because it's a lot harder than you think. I'm sure Dean and Josh, when you were first year as an administrator, I'm sure it was a real challenge for you. So
I always say that whether you're a coach or a teacher, you're still a coach and you're still a leader. So everything you do impacts others. So I'm glad you said that. Hey, where's the pyramid of success? Is that over your shoulder somewhere by the coach?
Actually, I have a signed pyramid of success. It's actually down in my work area in my basement. So
I used to refer to that often. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a great roadmap, no doubt.
Yeah. In fact, I think that's what is interesting, because at the top is competitive greatness. And I'll share a story with you. So my last year in coaching was in 2016. I had a young man, that was a pretty good player, but he was kind of under the radar. He ended up signing at the University of Vermont and he got a full basketball scholarship, but he was 6'6", so he was kind of an undersized big guy. He went to Vermont. He had a great career, and but I never thought he would, play above Vermont. And last year he actually played with the Golden State Warriors. So, and the one thing why I say that is because what Anthony was different than a lot of people that I coached was that his competitive greatness. And this is a great example for educators. For anyone that's in physical education, you've probably done some type of fitness test. And one of the fitness tests we used to do is called the PACER. And it was a cardiovascular test where you would run 20 meters across the gym. And after, I think it's every 7 lengths, it would speed up a little bit. And the concept is that as you moved through, it'll get tougher and tougher and people would drop out. But I called it a character test. Here's why. Because even athletes, so we're very good athletes, wouldn't try and they would drop out early. And it used to really bother me because, as I said, to me, it was hurting the test because of their character, not because of their physical fitness. But to give you an example, Anthony, in his senior in high school, was 6'6", 220 pounds. A good score in that test was around 70. He did 110. So it gives you an idea of his kind of character. And I think it's a great lesson for all of us that when you have that kind of drive and competitive greatness, you can do a lot more. You might not make the NBA, but you can do a lot more than you think you can.
That's fair.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that story. Big shout out to Ross Gaskins, doctor, joining us tonight, part of the Fantastic Four. Hey, Ross, nice seeing you here. Hey, Coach, wanted to ask you, obviously there came a point in time that there was a trigger in your mind in your professional career where you moved from the classroom, the court, to being a speaker. So what created that? What led to that?
Well, as I mentioned, I got really into my own personal growth. So I started to speak because I started to have more success as a coach. In fact, I'm honored. I'm going to be inducted in our Hall of Fame next month for our area. And but the crazy thing is, my first year we won 1 game, and I finished with over 400 wins. So things got a lot better. But with the concept was that. That I just wanted to strive what I learned, and I started to really work with my young people is teaching them leadership skills. Like I developed this leadership keys. And so what happened when Jason's story exploded around the world, people started to ask me. So I started this inspirational keynote called Dreams Really Do Come True, where I share Jason's story and with the concept that, every dream's not going to come true, but you can do a lot more than you think you can. And I travel the country, I still do. But the last probably 6 or 7 years, I've been so fascinated with leadership that I've been doing keynotes. I still do that one, but I do a keynote on leadership lessons. I do another keynote on building team culture. I call it building championship team culture. I do another keynote on inclusion. I do a personal leadership keynote called the 10 questions all effective leaders should be able to answer. So I do workshops on those as well. So I've been mostly a keynote speaker, but that gave me the opportunity. And then I'll tell you, when I got into speaking, I started to like it, but I was clueless. Like anything, when you first start out, think like you were talking about, when you first get into teaching or first get into coaching or when you first get in a new job in administration, there's some challenges. But what I started to do better, like I did in becoming a better teacher and a coach, is I really made it a study. And I got great advice. I was in an event in Chicago, and this audience member came over after, and he says, "Coach, you got really a lot of potential to be a great speaker." And I said, "Oh, thank you." He said, "You should join the National Speakers Association." And I looked at him like he had 2 heads. And I said, "What is that?" I have no idea. And so I joined. I've actually been a member for about 12 years, and it's helped me immensely. I've learned from some of the best speakers in the world and met some of the best and nicest speakers in the world. So again, one thing I advise for anyone is that if you're going to be great in something, you got to be a student of it. and no better than education is, our best students that make us study, learn the most, and then implement in their life are the people that end up being the most effective.
Well said. Absolutely perfect. Hey, talk a little bit, if you can, Jim, about your book, A Coach in a Miracle. Give the audience an overview of the uplifting story that is embedded within this.
Sure. So it's certainly an inspiring story, and it is based on my first keynote. So I have some different chapters based on the different things like finding your passion, how to be an effective goal setter. But the other thing I do weave in, ironically, I wrote it with a guy that I went to high school that was a newspaper writer, and he has two sons on the autism spectrum. So Jason's story touched him deeply. But the crazy thing about that was that story almost never happened because the first 3 weeks of that season was the most difficult I've ever had. Our team got divided, and it was a real struggle. In fact, I nearly resigned. And if it had to been for my staff and my wife, because I was a big quote guy, I used to give my team a quote every day. And I remember my staff members and my wife both saying, "Hey, you always talk about when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Step up, coach." And that was the best advice they could have given me because it really helped me. And that was a real tough, but ended up being the most rewarding year because we ended up getting the culture back together. And then I did do an epilogue when I retired. Jason actually came back after 2 years after he graduated. He worked at a local grocery store. And he came to him one day and he said, "Coach, I really missed the program. Can I come back and help you?" And I said, "Sure." So he was like my right-hand man. He would come to every practice for my last 8 years. And actually, we won 5 more championships together. So I kid people that for a small fee, I will rent him out to you. So he was certainly a good luck charm for me. If you want a little side inspirational story, because a lot of people ask me about what Jason's doing now. Well, Jason grew after high school. He was 5'9", 115 pounds in that game. He's now 6'2", 170. And in high school, he was also a runner, but because he was so small in stature, he was just an average runner. But he came in one day when he was coaching with me, and he says, "Coach, I love coaching. Thanks for having me. But I want to get back into doing something competitive myself." And I said, "Well, what's that?" He says, "I'm going to get back into running." I said, "Really?" He said, "What are you going to do?" He says, "I'm going to run the Rochester Marathon, our local marathon." I said, "Okay, what's your goal for that?" He says, "Coach, I'm going to qualify for the Boston Marathon." Now, for your listeners, I don't know how many of them are runners, but to qualify for the Boston Marathon, you have a qualifying time based on your gender and your age. And so I've never run a marathon, but I was a runner as well. So I'm pretty understanding of what running times are. I said, "Jason, what's the qualifying time for the Boston Marathon?" He says, "Coach, 3 hours and 5 minutes." Now, I almost fell off my chair because that's a really fast marathon, believe me. So I said, "Jason, that is so fast." He goes, "Coach, I got Coach Shoemaker, who's our cross-country coach. He's training me. First Rochester Marathon, he runs in 3 hours, 1 minute and 40 seconds. So he qualifies for Boston. The crazy thing is he comes back 2 weeks later. He says, "Coach, I'm not going next year. I don't feel up to it yet." I said, "What do you mean?" The crazy thing is the next year was when they had the bombing at the Boston Marathon when he could have gone. So somebody upstairs was talking to him. He runs the Rochester Marathon again, breaks 3 hours, 46 seconds this time. So, and he comes back, he's all excited. "Coach, I'm going to Boston." I said, "What's your goal for Boston?" He says, "Coach, I'm going to break 3 hours." I said, "Jason, it's got Heartbreak Hill. It's one of the toughest marathons in our country." He goes, "Coach, I'm upgrading my training. First Rochester or Boston Marathon, 2 hours, 58 minutes and 42 seconds. So he keeps inspiring me even up to this day.
Wow, that's just totally amazing. Well, with my big belly, it takes me 3 days to run a marathon. So I'm just saying that, putting it out there, right? It is what it is. So, hey, Coach, real quick, you know what? On your website, you talk about dreams coming true. How do you know that? How do you know that's a reality, that dreams come true?
Well, I think the one thing is I think what really hit me is after a few weeks after Jason's game and after our season had finished, I said, "You know what? Almost everybody has a dream, but I think a lot of people don't think their dream can come true." So what I want to do is help people with the things I learned with all the young people that I've helped try to make their dreams come true, from a player playing in the NBA to what Jason did. And certainly we're not going to get maybe playing in the NBA or scoring 20 points in less than 4 minutes in your only game. But what I really want to work with people is that develop a dream and then really put your desire and your competitive greatness and setting specific goals. I do a whole goal setting workshop that help because we spend a lot of time with our players on both team and individual goals. And then really understanding what it takes to make your dreams come true. Because even when a lot of times we'll dream of something big, and we may not end up with that, but we might end up with something even better. That's like when I was young, my coaching dream is I wanted to be a head coach in Division I program. But after getting into high school, I said, you know what, I can really make an impact with these young people. And that ended up being the best decision for me because I really felt that through teaching and coaching, I could impact young people day in and day out. And that's what drove my passion. And, I mean, I can't say this, but I mean, I became a big Oprah Winfrey fan. And one day I was on her show. I mean, it's like, so you never know, things can happen that you don't least expect. So.
You never know is absolutely correct. So this is a great question here. In education, there are many new administrators due to the exodus. How can your philosophy assist a new assistant principal or principal who is leading a campus using leadership from half court? And I love that because I'm a basketball coach coaching a 200-member team right now. And that's the way I look at what I do. I took everything with me from the basketball court into leadership.
Well, I'm going to run through really quick, and then if you want to delve into any of the points, but I do a whole leadership presentation, and I talk about 7 keys. Okay, so very quickly, I'll run through them, then you can delve in any if you'd like to delve in any deeper. I think the first one is you have the clarity of what your vision is all about. So clarifying your vision is one, and I think it's really important that you have clarity. As the first person you got to lead is yourself. So I'm really encourage people, and I help people to get them to think about why would they put it on this earth, what I call a personal mission statement. And then also understanding and developing the mission for your team, your school, your business, whatever it happens to be, that mission statement. And as a leader, you got to be the CRO, not the CEO. The CRO is the Chief Reminding Officer. You got to consistently live the mission and share the mission. Secondly, I would often ask my audiences, is trust important in leadership and building great team culture? 100%. Then I challenge them. I said, well, do you have an intentional plan on how you're going to build trust with your people? And they kind of look at me like, no, I don't have it. And that's something we did. We could delve into, we had 3-prong approach that we did and trying to build trust. The third one is creating an edge. I think effective leaders are always trying to get better and find ways to improve their team or organization. Number 4 is effective communication. With the emphasis, it's nice to be a better public speaker. I think it is helpful as a leader, but I think the most important thing, and something I learned the second half of my career I did much better, is you got to become a better listener. As the old adage, there's 2 ears and 1 mouth. You really got to focus on listening more than you talk. The 5th key is lead by example, which is pretty obvious, but we know often not the case. Leaders say one thing and do another, and that really breaks your trust, which is one of our trust points. The next one is my leadership philosophy, which is called Leave a Profit. And that simply means that everything we touch, we want to make better, not worse. That was our philosophy that we ingrained into our teams every year. And then the last one is something that I think is essential in successful leadership, and that's being a servant leader.
You touched them all. That's an inside the park home run. Every one of them. And don't forget being fair and transparent and consistent.
Absolutely.
Boom, boom, and boom. Love it.
So, Coach, what do you feel from those that you just covered should be one of the focal points for a brand new administrator? Just wondering your thoughts. Since you've been around, you've seen a lot of people, the novice, especially a lot of administrators, Dean could tell you this, a lot of administrators really don't have that grooming, like all of us old people, like him and I, that we had that grooming, a couple of years teaching, a couple of years assistant principal, and then a lot of the brand for us, especially that guy. A lot of old guys are seeing brand new kids being popped up to the main chair real quick. So from
Right.
those 10 points, what do you think should be like a main focus? There is always, they're all important, but what do you feel is a main focal point?
Well, I think it starts in leadership. I think if you're going to be a great, effective leader, you have to build relationships. So that's number one. I think you got to get to know your people. We can let me delve into quickly. When we took over 4 programs, the first one, as I mentioned, was a disaster. The other 3 we were able to turn around, is because we spent a lot of time building trust with our staff and our players. And we had a 3-prong approach. So the first prong was that we had to consistently align our words and actions. Example, like we used to practice in the morning at 6 a.m., which early in my career, our players were pretty grumpy about that. But if we were going to practice at 6 a.m., I was almost always the first one there. I was always there at 5:30, that kind of thing. So you're setting the example. Number 2 is, I think you got to, as the Bible says, the truth will set you free. So you got to really build that you're going to tell each other the truth. And as a leader, you've got to understand that it's both a science and an art. Sometimes you can call people out in front of everybody, but that's getting to know your people. Sometimes you got to do that one-on-one, closed doors. And I think that's important as you're learning. And then the third thing is that I think too often in leadership positions, we think we got to be the critiquer. And although that's part of it, okay, I know you guys mentioned about game film. I watched a lot of game film and we were critique. But I think when you're building trust, you got to start with the famous Ken Blanchard from the 1 Minute Manager, and that you got to focus on catching people doing the right thing and making sure that you praise specifically. Example, in basketball, instead of saying, "Nice job, Johnny," because I was a boys basketball coach, Johnny likes that, but he has no clue really what I'm praising. I say, "Johnny, that was a great job how you dove on the floor for that loose ball. That's what great players do on championship teams." Now he's very specific of why he got praised. And as we know in leadership, what you praise, you usually get more of if you're specific and there's clarity of that. And then the other thing I would say is you got to be a student of what you're doing. So I think reading, listening to programs, finding a mentor that can help you. Sometimes, like I have a lot of mentors just because I mentioned John Wooden. I read a lot about John Wooden. What did he do? Well, how could he have that kind of success? And you know what I kept hearing? He cared more about his players than he did about wins. And that's usually leads to good things. And it's something, I'll share one other quick story. The young man I told you, Anthony, that played in the NBA, I had lunch with him and with my JV coach that became the head coach after I retired. And he said at the lunch, and I was a proud papa because he goes, Coach Setzer, that was my assistant coach, is now the head coach. He goes, what I admired about Coach Johnson more than anything, he goes, I thought he was a really good basketball coach, but I knew he cared about me more as a person than he did about me as a basketball player. And that was probably one of the things that when you can get people believing in you because they know you care. I think that's the best advice you can do in leadership is people got to know you care.
I
Say it, Josh.
100% I agree. Go ahead.
Say what you're going to say. Students don't care what.
Kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Absolutely.
Bingo.
Hey,
Coin the phrase.
And,
Yep.
and you know what, Coach? It's so true. Even sitting in the chair I sat in for 23 years as an administrator, when we get, and I know that our team members in the classroom also, when we get here's a certificate, that's so shallow to me.
Mm-hmm.
You're just checking off the box. If you
Right.
just put my picture with a certificate, what are you doing? You're really checking off the box. But if you're going in deep and you're telling me because you did this and this and this, that's when you really truly feel appreciated, not just checking off the box with a picture and a certificate. Oh, great, thank you. Or whenever you get those texts from 10,000 people and you're part of that and say, "I love you." No, you don't. It's about that attention to detail, making sure that you connect with people and not being shallow in your leadership. And that also happens with leadership in the classroom. So I love that you said that because right now a lot of administrators don't get that. And so the focus has been this year in our sphere of influence, making sure that we connect with the SEL, with the adults, not only the kids. Last year was the kids, but now it's encompassing everybody else. Now, you said that there's 10 questions that administrator needs to know in the toughest times. How can we merge these two concepts of supporting our team members who are brand new, again, the exodus, brand new to the field, alternative certification. They never went through the traditional process that we all went through. They don't know how to do lesson plans. They don't know how to do classroom management. Even worse now, and also maintaining that love for the beautiful profession that we are. So how can we merge those two things?
Well, I think the one thing, I know this is a little bit redundant, but one of the questions I ask is, uh, do you have a personal mission statement? So really clarity about who you are. And the second part of that is, what are your three most important values? Because I've spoke to a lot of schools, but I also speak to a lot of businesses, and I'm often asked, I'll talk to them about their core values. And, sometimes they're up on the wall, but it's amazing how many people really don't know what the core values of the team or school organization. And as a person, as a leader, do you know what is most important to you? What are your three most important core values? I think that's so having clarity on your personal is where it starts. And then being able to share and inspire by how you leading by example. How you share. I think it's really important as a leader to become a great storyteller. That you're always finding stories to share. Stories like I used to tell my players. Good news and bad news. Like talk about it. Why is this guy? I did a lot with basketball with my basketball team. How come this guy, wherever he goes, their teams win? And then I will point out another guy, and I'm not going to pick on anybody, but I'll say, how come every place he's going, because he's really talented, they lose? And then I would try to point out, what's the difference? Well, it probably had to do with that person's attitude, their work ethic. Are they showing up consistently? Consistent is a really big thing. And I'll give you a little sidelight, something, that video is so big. But one of the things that I think, as your administrators with your staff is a great way that you can just stay in contact is send out little short videos that you make. Like, let's say you walk by a classroom and you see a teacher do something really nice with a classroom, then send a little video to them and say, hey, Sue, that was awesome what you did today. And, specify exactly. Or, even like, it's their birthday, sing them happy birthday. Or just a check-in. Hey, John, this is your first year. It's your third week. I just wanted to check in, see how you're doing. Is there anything I can help you with? Those people appreciate that. And you do that a lot of different ways. But because video's not, because I heard someone, this is advice I really grabbed because he said to me, video is so big now. But when's the last time you got a personal video? And I said, wow, he's right. So I send out personal videos almost every day. In fact, Josh, I have your cell phone, so it's going to be dangerous. You probably get a video from me. So Dean, if I get your cell phone, you'll be in trouble.
You got it. It's on a three-way exchange we had.
Okay.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Hey, all right, let's switch gears for 1 second. I was caught up with that because my mind was thinking how I could do, and I love strategic things like that. So I'm going to take that and run. All right, talk about the audience. Talk to the audience about your podcast. Okay, Josh and I have been doing this for a long time. Chris, another guy who started it with us, we did it to give back, and it's one of the things we absolutely love to do. So, what is the format of your show, and who is the target audience, and where can people find it?
Sure. It's called the Limitless Leadership Lounge, and it was a brainchild that I started, but I wanted to do something different. So we call ourselves tri-generational. I'm the veteran. I'm in my 60s. We have a college professor that teaches at a local college about 30 minutes, but she actually started a nonprofit. She's from Bangladesh, so she splits her year between the U.S. and Bangladesh. Her name is Dr. Runumar Karim. Then we have a young guy that actually went to the high school where I taught and coached, but I had retired. I actually met him. I become an avid tennis player later in life, and his name is John, and he's got his master's in communications. He works part-time at a radio station. He has his own business. But our goal is to help young and emerging leaders. And that was my brain thought, was because I really struggled when I was early as a leader and I wanted to give back. So we've done about 110. We release it every Wednesday. And we've interviewed some of the top leaders from all over the world. We've probably done 20 to 25 where we've done the three of us talking about different topics. Like we did a summer project where we analyzed the 7 habits of highly effective people, one of my favorite books. And then and then also we've interviewed all kinds of people in all kinds of leadership. We've interviewed educators, we've interviewed CEOs of companies, we've interviewed all kinds of different people, just to try to share. And we really try to focus in on trying to help them give ideas for people when they're starting out in their leadership journey, how they can lead themselves better, how they can lead others better.
Great stuff right there.
Awesome job, Coach. Thank you. How can people get a hold of you?
So my website is coachjimjohnson.com. That way I wouldn't forget it. And I'll tell you one, you'll like this Texas story, Josh, although I know you're not a Cowboy fan, but I spoke in Dallas a few years ago, and a driver picked me up and it said Coach Jim Johnson. And believe it or not, he had a lot of people come because he thought it was Jimmy Johnson. He used to be the head coach of the Cowboys. So they were all disappointed when I walked off the plane, but that's a story for another time. But on that website, I have a lady I work with named Kate that's great. So if I can ever help you with a presentation. Also, we have a lot of free material. I have a YouTube channel. I have a weekly free blog and a monthly free newsletter. So I try to give back. And I also, if you follow me on socials, I do a success thought every morning. I do a leadership thought every afternoon. And then I share other people's, podcasts and stuff, just trying to give back and help people become better leaders.
There it is right there, Josh.
There we go. That's awesome. Thank you, Coach, for being here tonight. Did a great job. But hey, Dean, it's not over. It's not over, Dean Packard. You and your little wise ideas. Thursday, the Red Zone, 9 p.m. Eastern, the Leadership Show coming up. Don't forget, everybody, we started the routine again of pattern of behavior. Every Tuesday, we have office hours, a 20-minute problem-solving show, and the following subsequent Thursday will be Red Zone. We're starting that, and then soon we're going to change the days because someone decided to be a high school principal. Somebody had to change the days. I don't know who.
I graduated. I elevated.
So don't forget, make sure that you follow us this Thursday, and then the following day is going to be on Tuesday. And don't forget, we're part of the Fantastic Four. Follow educator Sean Hurt on Saturday, then Shika Houston, then Principal Cafele, and close us out the week with us at Unlock the Middle.
There it is right there. Hey, on behalf of Coach Johnson, outstanding job, man. Everything you're talking about should be embedded in every leadership pathway. There's no doubt about it. You're outstanding. I hope that you guys do retweet this and share it out because there's a lot of nuggets here that just will help either refine or help you adjust your leadership path. Not only leadership, but teaching and coaching, everything to do when you're working with people. So thank you so much for joining us. We greatly appreciate it.
My pleasure. It was great. I look forward to continuing our conversation. I admire what you guys are doing. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, there it is, guys. All right there. Have a great week. And remember, kids always deserve the best you possible. Have a great week, everybody. Take care.